So Parshas Zinu, one of the most beautiful and complex parshas in the entirety of the Torah. Because according to everybody, it's it's about what Klal Yisrael is, what Klal Yisrael has gone through, and what Klal Yisrael will, and what will happen to Klal Yisrael in the future of, you would say, the future of Klal Yisrael. So it's both historical, present perspective, and future. The only question is the machlokes, between Rashi and the Ramban on how to view that perspective. So if you take a look at the Rashi, let me find the Rashi. On it's
This was handed over much.
Huh?
Hazinu was handed over much.
Yeah. Benjamin gives Shiur Hazinu to Klal Yisrael. Where's the I'm the road. Anyway.
It was given up about much.
Sure.
Because technically he was lifted.
No, afterwards.
Not yet. Seems not.
Okay. If you take a look at the Rashi on Pasuk Yud Beis, Lamed Beis Yud Beis. Look at the Rashi. Interesting Rashi. Lamed Beis Yud Beis, right before Shlishi. That's Pasuk right before Shlishi. Hashem badad yanchenu ve'eni mo el necha. So the Rashi brings like this: Hashem badad yanchenu. Hashem will leave them badad, will guide them badad. So Hashem badad u'betuach nahagam b'midbar. Hashem is by himself. Is sure there is betuach. Hashem led them single-handedly throughout the midbar. So it's referring to Hashem badad yanchenu, which means you're talking about something very, very praiseworthy. Hashem leads Klal Yisrael personally, without any intermediaries. When Klal Yisrael was in the midbar, not a single one of the nations could ever do battle with Klal Yisrael. That's the first shot in Rashi. Then Rashi goes on Rabbi Sen Darshu. I'm going to say then Rashi Rabbi Sen Darshu Alos. Rashi says this part Chachamim. Darshan is supposed to go about the future of Klal Yisrael. And that's why Tagamunkus, Hashem will lead Klal Yisrael by him single-handedly. Nobody else will lead. Nobody will be able to touch Klal Yisrael because Hashem will lead Klal Yisrael all by himself. Not the other nations will not be able to harm him. Right. So the first Rashi is in the midbar. Hashem guided them. The past. Rabbi Seinu Darshu, Darshan. That's we're talking about the future. Then Rashi says, very rarely the Rashi does it. Oh. Hope that didn't hurt you too much, Moshe, when the cell phone fell. Rabbi says, and Rashi says, I know that these are words of admonition, words of Misr. That this is a prophecy that Bnei Yisrael will rebel against Hashem, will rebel against Hashem. And they will no longer remember the wonderful things Hashem did for them. And they're not paying attention to what will happen to them. So therefore, in order to learn these three different shotim, past, present, and future, you have to darshan it all the different ways. Interesting Rashi. Very Rashi. And all of it centers around the pasuk. Remember the days of the world. To pay attention to all the future generations. And also Lahem is what Hashem did for them. And also and Hashem will do. It goes. This is what you remember. Right. So Rashi is learning Pshat, these psukim. Rashi, all this is to warn Bnei Yisrael that they should not abandon Hashem. The Ramban in Chamishi says just the opposite. Says all of this is that would give Klal Yisrael the assurance that even after Klal Yisrael will turn against Hashem, Hashem will always redeem them and punish all those, will take Nakam on all those who afflict Klal Yisrael. So take a look at the Psukim in Chamishi, and according to the Ramban, it's a much different way to learn Pshat. And you see, we can learn Rashi as well. If you only have wisdom and they will think about it, they will understand what will happen and ultimately will happen. How is it possible that one can chase 1,000 and two can chase 20,000? Imloi, unless their rock has sold them, Hashem is given them, and Hashem will close them up. Which way is this going? Is referring to Klal Yisrael, referring to our enemy. Yeah. Which way is the Psukim going? Is it talking about, as Rashi said, I'm telling you this is talking about Klal Yisrael is going to rebel against Hashem, and according to Rashi, learns that one of our enemies will chase 1,000 Jews, and two of our enemies will drive away 20,000 Jews. And the Rambam is just the opposite. He learns that Hashem will always do Klal Yisrael, that one of Klal Yisrael will be able to drive away 1,000 of our enemies, and two of Klal Yisrael will be able to drive away 20,000 of our enemies. You look, because as the Rambam learns, their gods have abandoned them. Hashem is scared, but Hashem has protected them, has protected Klal Yisrael. Hashem, right? So it's a fascinating divergence of Shotim, exactly opposites. Yeah, exactly the opposite Perushim. And it keeps on going. Our rock is not like their rock. It means our God is not like their rock, their God. And our enemies are Pelilim. So Rashi learns Pelilim is that they are enemies. Their courts will all rule over us. And the Ramban says, no, our enemies will be confused, will be completely lost. And keeps the Kim is like Kasim is like Gavnam had Musamura, and never in Beroish, Ashkos Mur Slumber, Hamas Tanim, Ye number Lachzer. Hello, Hamas and Modi Chasam by Twerski. This is already set away. I've hidden this away, locked away in my treasure house. Which way? Rashi learns that the punishment, the suffering of Klal Yisrael is already guaranteed. And Ramban says, no, this is talking about Hashem's protect, going to get promises. He's going to protect Klal Yisrael. That the future of Klal Yisrael will always be secure. So it's a fascinating to see two such opposite Perushim on these throughout the entire Parshas that way. The very hard Parshas, the Shiur, it's Shiur's Hazinu. The Shiur's Hazinu, because according to after you take everything all apart, it's past, present, and future of Klal Yisrael, then lies everything that we would need to know about what's happening to us and the promises that will happen to us. Because ultimately, the Shiur ends at the right at the end of Shishi. No question that is saying that Hashem will ultimately take vengeance upon our enemies. The Nacham Yosher, the serve Hashem's Nakama will take place on those who oppress us. For Chipad Masam and Klal Yisrael will ultimately be. Hashem will ultimately be mechapek for Klal Yisrael. Right, and Rashi brings again. Rashi brings the both sides of the parish. So that's why the very take a look at the Rashi on pasuk on that pasuk from Gimel, because he goes through he goes through the drushes that said this is talking about Klal Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael have abandoned Hashem, and therefore will suffer for it. And the last two lines of Rashi, he says, no, this whole thing is referring to Hashem's punishing the enemies who are idolaters. Because they are the nation who refuses to accept good advice. Just as I said before, the pasuk attached before, so this paradox, this two ways to learn the entire parsha is fascinating. So there's a number of different ways that we can learn it, and here we are after Yom Kippur. So this is always Parshas comes in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot.
There's always a Shabbos.
No, but if not, then it's the Parsha, the Shabbos Shuvah. Because also always has to come up before Sukkot.
Right.
Because that's a bracha. It's,
right. And that's why a friend of mine had a baby, grandchild. It was a girl. But we're talking about it was a boy, and the baby was born in Kippur. What the mitzvah? So I said, "Could be a zina."
Yeah.
And I said, "No, it's a bracha. It's a girl."
Right. Today's world, that.
Yeah, we had that conversation.
So there's a famous quote from the Baal Shem. There's a medrash very similar to it. It says, we say Friday night in the Zemiros. By the Zemiros of Friday nights, Zemiros in Kol Mekadosh Green. Mem, right? Draw chesed to those who know you. Kel Chananokim, you are the vengeful God. So Hashem said, you would appear to be a steerer. So Baal Shem said that it gives a motion. But a king goes traveling through the countryside and comes through a town, and one of the peasants is irritated. Here the king is passing, he's blocking traffic. Yep. And he was trying to get to the other side of town. And here's this parade going on, and he's very angry. What's with the blocking the road? He's got his horse wagon blocking traffic. So he picks up a rock and throws it at the king. So the king's ministers want to take him out and string him up. He said, no. He says, bring him into the palace. Brought him to the palace. He's a peasant. He said, listen, we're going to do you a favor. If we tell now you've been living as a poor person, ignorant and impoverished, we're going to teach you how to live a nice life. And they educate him, and they provide for him, and he gets to understand the greatness of the king. And he also realizes, oh my goodness, I threw a rock at the king. The king is such a Baal Chesed, a great king. So there's two ways to take Nekama. You can take Nekama by punishing a person. You can take Nekama by showing them how foolish they were when they made the wrong choices. we came to Yom Kippur, we come to Hashanah's Yom Kippur, we get ready for Sukkot. And Sukkot is all about chesed. The Ariya could have says that the Shiur for a kosher Sukkah is 2 walls and a tefach. How do you get 2 walls and a tefach? It says, because that's the arm of a mother. Holds a baby, 2 arms, and a tefach. Right? Oh, that's the whole baby. So some say, therefore, you have to have the tefach attached. Right? And some say, no, you can have the tefach not attached. So machlokes l'halach. Well, Dafn Akuma is the wall. Now this is love. This is love. So there's a lot of it's a tremendous amount of Torah on this halach of love, even al pi Kabbalah. How does love work? Either it's attached or it's not attached. It's al pi halacha, it's attached. Right? Yeah. So we recognize that the space in between can be part of what's attached, as long as you know that it belongs there. So as the Baal Shem said, it says Hashem, we can tell Hashem. There's 2 ways to take the Kama of the Goyim. They can see the Hashem will punish them, or they can see how great Klal Yisrael is. They say, oh my goodness, this is what we did to Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael, Klal Yisrael sustaining the whole world. So the Baal Shem says, that's pshat, and then there's mirrors. How are you going to bring a chesed into the world? Show them what the vengeance looks like when we see the chesed that Hashem does for us. So it said that we have a tendency to think about Yom Kippur in such awesome and such frightening. It better daven well, because otherwise we're going to have some kind of punch. We're going to have a terrible year. Or we could say that we're having with the Klal Yisrael has the schiyah, has the merit to see Hashem's chesed for Klal Yisrael. He shows us how to come close to Him. Right? The nations we're going to have Yom Kippur, they're never forced to think about how they're going to do tshuva. They're not forced to think about how they're going to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how they're going to get the chesed of Hashem. So by very fact that we have Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we have Yomei Adin Barachimim, and then we come out into the sukkah where we step out of our house to go into the sukkah, which is Shalom, which is the Abba of Hashem to Bnei Yisrael. Ki b'sukkah teshavtes Bnei Yisrael b'Yisrael. Sukkah, I will get closer to dwell in the sukkah. But Hashem says, I protected you from the Anana covered, protected you from all different sides, from the winds, and your clothing grew on you, and they never wore out. So Anana covered cleansed them. But that's a tremendous awareness that Klal Yisrael has when we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in our lives all the time. So I thought about that really, even though to learn the Pshat Psukim, we could either learn like Rashi or Ramban. Rashi says you could learn it like Rabbi Nechemia learned that this is called the suffering, that the vengeance that Hashem will reap upon our enemies, or it's Hashem shows us that He will hold us accountable for everything that we do, and we have to go through all the difficulties until we discover that Hashem, like Hashem, our rock, Hashem, our relationship is greater than anything that any of the nations can have. So among the stories that are told about the revolution of the Melech and the 22 years that they were in Golos, actually they were in Golos, they accepted upon themselves 20 years of Golos. Punishment was him coming on themselves 20 years of Golos. And they ended up coming to, I think it was Polna. It was called the Machiach of Polna. One of the Talmidei Hashem was known to be a Machiach. He was the one who gave Musar. And he walked in, he looked at him, and says, I can tell you that if I were being Golos after 20 years, I would look better than you do. So they went back into Golos for another 2 years. One part of the story. The other part of the story is at the end of 20 years, the Rebbe Sisha comes home, heads back to town, on the pole. I mean, he obviously had been home during that period of time, but he constantly was leaving. But after 20 years, he came home, and and one of the Eden came running over to him and says, "Was macht Mendele?" He says, "How's Mendele doing?" The had a son. One of the sons was a Baron Menachem. It was known as Mendele on the pole. So she said, "There's something wrong with Mendele. What's the matter with Mendele?" He went running home, opened up the door, and said, "What's the matter with Mendele?" So the Rebbe looked and says, "No, Nishan's a Mendele. The Shochet's Mendele. Not our Mendele, it's the neighbor's Mendele who's sick. Our Mendele is fine." He says, Baruch Hashem. And then he says, He says, what do I differentiate between the source of my children versus the source of another child? He says, it seems like I haven't done enough goals. Because if I could care less about another Jew's suffering than my own child suffering, then I have not yet accomplished what I need to accomplish. And that it would appear to be, if we take a look at all of the tefillas of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, because they're all Lashon Rabbim. Shamnu, Paganu, Kasam, Al Chetz Chotanu, Lefanech, it's all Lashon Rabbim. Because do we care about what's happening with other people, Klal Yisrael? I've told over the anecdote that my father and my uncles would always say about the Yid in Milwaukee. He talked to himself. There was one Yid. He was always talking to himself. So on Yom Kippur, they would go over. He'd doing the clapping al chet. He'd have the towels over his head, and they'd sit there listening to him. He says, "Al chet shechatan levanecha." He says, this year I didn't do that one. He says, that one. Oh, very. No, not so bad. I didn't think it was fine. He was talking to himself, right? So they said, but if you really thought about it, that's the way we think about clapping al chet. We're trying to make a cheshbon. Which things do we have that we have fallen through? I guess not me. I'm bring somebody else. No, the answer is if it's happening to somebody in Klal Yisrael, then it's happening to us. And so when we see that there are other Jews that are out there suffering and they're struggling, being trying to find their way back. GPS, God's positioning system. David is going to find a way to get back, but we have to recognize that there are Jews that are out there wandering, trying to find the way back, and Hashem is ultimately going to work out so they're going to find the way back. Are we davening for them, or are we just saying, okay, I'm okay. I don't have to worry about somebody another year. As long as the moment that we say, I only have to have to worry about my own, I don't have to worry about another person's child, then we've lost the whole essence of what Yom Kippur is supposed to give us. Because we could ask ourselves, how many different ways did I sin this year? Or we can say, how many ways do I need to help others and myself find their way back? That becomes the essence of what everything that we daven Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur to get to see Malchus, right? Get the Malchus Shema, Malchus Hashem, reach the highest madrigal we can the whole year. That we can declare clearly that Hashem is the Melech HaKol Haaretz. And we say, Baruch Hashem, I'm okay, but I don't have to worry about everybody else. Then we've lost the essence of what the Yom Noraim and what Sukkot says, like Sukkot says, B'nai Yisrael. Hashem says, I surrounded all of Israel, I took care of all Israel, I put them away. Anana Kavod surrounded Klal Yisrael and protected us. As long as we're including ourselves inside the cloud, including everybody else is supposed to be inside the Anana Kavod. That's why they said that there's special inyan of having orchim, because we're going to invite the shpizin into the sukkah. How do we have it without? How do we have it with the shpizin without having guests there? Right, and that's how we get to the Kaddish before Kiyavna. Because Kaddish Kiyavna was a promise made by the Abdul to all future generations would say that Kaddish. In order to be able to show that, as the Shiur Shel Shabbos says, the first line of Sukkah Shleimach, every Friday night we say first line of Sukkah Shleimach. That's Sukkah Rachman Shalom. First line of Sukkah Rachman. I would say first line. It says because every Friday night is Sukkah. So every Friday night we welcome in the others and the Shpiz. We get to see them. Not okay. We did Kabbalah Shabbos, but did we really connect to the others? I'm using the English and I started this every Friday night. First line of Sukkah Shleimach, asking Hashem to give us that Sukkah Shalom, give us that special connection. So should we not dance when we're reading the others on Friday night? Reading the others, right? The others are there. They waited. They came to help us get into Shabbos to give us something to show me. So what should we do? We say thank you very much. See you next week. And we say, oh. Some say that's definitely the real definition of Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, with the Malach Asher, which from Malach of Malach Medamah, and with the opposite Kadosh. They are the ones that Hashem sends to make sure that we get on the Shalom Yisera. So Baruch Hu the Shalom. So then, what are we going to ask? What are we going to ask from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe? What are we going to ask from them? Baruch Hu the Shalom. Give me a week. The greatness of the chesed that Hashem has for us. And when the nations of the world will see the chesed Hashem has for us, their faces will turn green from envy. Yeah, that's and enemies will have an account. What will be in the comment? They'll see how wonderful it is to be Klal Yisrael. So Klal Yisrael is doing for them, for the world. The Shivan Korban is right of Sukkot. It says if the nations of the world would know how much Klal Yisrael accomplished by the 70 Korbanos, 70 Purim that are brought on Sukkot, they will all come running, begging us to please to bring the Korbanos. Because the gift that we bring to the world, do we see it? Do we appreciate the gift of Shabbos that brings to us in our world? How great Shabbos is, how wonderful Shabbos is for ourselves. So on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we're given a glimpse, a little glimpse to look inside and say, oh my goodness, there's such tremendous Kiddush. There's so much tremendous for us to hold on to. So then we could go through the entire Parsha, like Rashi says, you can learn it, you can learn both the Parsha both ways. And Rashi says, Ani Omer, I said it's all about the suffering of Klal Yisrael. And the Ramban says, no, it's all about the Nekama that Hashem will exact from all the nations that give us service. So interesting enough, the heard from David Cohen, was saying in the start. So he said, my rabbi said, he says the reason why we say the Kapitla Chtilin before the Chodoidi. because one is for every day of the week, and they are all about the future. Mizmor Shir Liyavim, Mizmor Shir Chodesh. Shir Chodesh is all about the future. It says it's all about Rina. It's all about talking about how the joy, the Klal Yisrael. Haninu Goyim Amar Kidam Avodav Yikon. Every Friday night we get a chance to look and see all the simcha that Kodesh will give to Klal Yisrael. When we see how our enemies will be held accountable for all the things that they've done to Klal Yisrael. She said that's why it's done before L'Chodei. L'Chodei is official Kabbalah Shabbos. Some say it's the Boy B'Sholem is Kabbalah Shabbos, and Mizmor Shel Yom Shabbos is Kabbalah Shabbos. But they still them again given to us before Shabbos. To prepare us for Shabbos, to be able to say, we're waiting for that ultimate Nekama, the ultimate Shir Chodesh, the new song that will come when the Shir will come. So they tell the story that there was a Yid came to one of the Talmidim of the Ramelech came to him and asked him, he says, what are the Kabbalas of Kapparas? What are you supposed to think about when you're doing Kapparas? He says, you have to look and go to this in town and go to the inn and just watch how that Yid does Kapparas. So he travels to that town, he comes to the Kretschmann, and he takes a room of the Kretschmann, and he hides in a corner to see what's going to happen. So when it comes before midnight, he calls in his wife. He says, "My wife, bring me the books." She comes over with two big, heavy books, the ledgers. He says, "The first book is the book of everything all the bears I did this year, and all, right? And then the other book is all the things that Hashem gave me difficulties." So he says, you know what, Hashem, for all the difficulties that Hashem gave me, it's in order to punish me for all my errors. So he says, because he took both books, he said, Zeh Chalifasi, Zeh Tumarasi, Zeh Kaparasi. He says, my complaints to Hashem, Hashem's complaints to me, Zeh Chalifasi, Zeh Tumarasi, Zeh Kaparasi. You got to understand what the real kavanah of Kapparas are. This is the matana, the gift that Hashem gave to Israel. He gave us Parshas Hazinu to prepare us so that we can have the perspective of seeing all of the amazing, wonderful things that Hashem does for us. And sometimes He does it in ways that are awesome, and sometimes a little bit overwhelming, but hidden within everything. And it's the recipe. I can't see the post on Rashi. It says it's although the Hashem will spread Klal Yisrael out. It says this is a matana. It says that it means that no matter what happens, Klal Yisrael will always be part of Klal Yisrael, which will be saved. Klal Yisrael can't. The nitzchus of Klal Yisrael has to survive. So we sometimes see the difficulties that Klal Yisrael goes through, and we have all these complaints about how come we're going through so many difficulties. There's a beautiful story that was recorded about when the Shah of Iran was deposed. Yeah. So the Yidden started suffering terribly. Until that point, the Yidden had lived a very privileged life under the Shah. So after he was, when he was deposed, so that the Yidden there was one family where they took the husband out and killed him. So the mother knew what was happening. She saw what was happening. She took her children. They took whatever they could carry on the back, And she knew she had made arrangements. They found there was somebody who knew how to smuggle them across the border to Turkey. So she went. She met them. They went middle of the night. They went to met the person who was going to do it. And he arranged it for somebody else who knows how to get. Says they have to go by. They said they have it on horses, on camels, or riding desert. Finally, he says they come to. They have to go to a river where he says that from this point, the camels can't go to this river. Horses can't make it to this river. He says, we can do it. I'll show you how to do it. But we can't take the animals. The animals won't help us. We have to leave the animals on the other side of the river. And they're complaining and they're worried. They got to walk through the desert. Their feet they're bleeding and the kids are crying. And finally they come to a river, a gorge, a canyon. There's swinging narrow bridges over the canyon. And the guy says, okay, tells the mother, you gotta cross. She said, I can't. We're barely alive. We've been walking on foot and traveling for weeks. We're barely having enough food. You always made sure they had water. Always made sure they had water. So he takes out his gun, his revolver, and points to the mother and says, either you cross the bridge or I'm going to shoot you now. So she goes, she says, okay. So all right, children, goodbye. And she walks in, and she makes it to the other side of the bridge. And the whole thing took 2-3 minutes, but it was every step felt like I get to the other side. Okay, children, you can do it. Now they'll come to the other side of the bridge. When I get to the other side of the bridge, this is the guy who looked at me says, I have to let you know I'm a Jew just like you are. Says, my whole mission now is to save Jewish families. Says, if I would not have forced you to go through all these difficulties, you wouldn't be alive. Says, the only way that I could save you is if I could not have any Rahman on you. If I had any Rahman on you, you would have given up a long time ago. So he said, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for Klal Yisrael. The things that we go through, for which we have great complaints about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes us go through difficulties. But without that, we wouldn't survive. How many Eden came to America from the 1880s all the way to World War II because they could not survive in Europe. And Europe was not a place they could not, they couldn't have Parnasa, they were running away from the Bolsheviks, etc. All of the pogroms that were taking place throughout Europe, through Eastern Europe, all the way through to the history. If you take a look at the history of the anti-Jewish laws that were taking place in Poland and Hungary in World War I and World War II. And Romania, that's right, yeah. But the Jews stayed was a good question. Why they stayed? Says, but ultimately those who fled were the ones who rebuilt Klal Yisrael. They were here. I once, when I was a bochar, I had a lot of chutzpah. I thought I knew it. So I used to spend I was in yeshiva in Borough, Fowler, and Shabbos in yeshiva was never very good because it was all local boys. It was like a handful of us from out of town. So I went to Square, and Square, they took care of Krovim and Zarchim. And I got to spend Shabbos my set. Shabbos place was by Ritzchel Drachim Sefgreb. Then he was the Rebbe Shvoger. He was the Shoel HaMeshiv in Yeshiva. And that's what he did. He sat and learned the whole day. So we could talk for hours. My sister, Rebbe from Borough Park. He was then.
60.
Yeah.
Then he was.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was a masmid awesome. He was sitting there, he come to his house. Yeah. So, what? Yeah, it was great schmoozer. We used to schmooze. Tremendous. He was great. So once I asked him, I said, I don't understand. He says, I grew up in Colorado where the Yishuv of Colorado, besides the first Jews who came out there were the German Jews, who were because of the gold rush, right? So they were the ones who sold them supplies. That's where Levi Strauss and the jeans came because of the Jews. Levi Strauss, two Jewish tailors. Yeah. So they came in the 1860s. But 1890 was when the pogroms were taking place in Russia, and so the Jews were fleeing Russia because their homes were being burnt down. They stayed there. The Jews were fleeing from 1880 till the Bolshevik Revolution, and the Bolshevik Revolution was terrible for the communists. They hated from Jews. So I told him, he says, I met a lot of those old timers. They were Elchid, Shem, Mitzvahs. And he says the wives never even dreamt about putting on a shtetl. They weren't gebinden. They wore their hair, their heads wrapped. He says, how come none of their children, very few of their children remained from? And why is it that it came after World War II? You got all of a sudden now there's yeshivas and there's this all of the wonderful things we're seeing happening. What happened? Why couldn't the Jews who came from the 1890s? Why couldn't they hold on to their children? So they could barely, if there was, they used to call it busser. If they could barely have kosher meat. They used to fly it, used to neon sign, kosher, kosher. That's a busser shop. If it happened to be kosher, it happened to be coincidental. So I asked him, why was it that the Klal Yisrael, that those Jews were not able to have their children survive? And also here, all these simple Jews are able to make things. He says, you're making a mistake. He says, it's maslatus. Make no mistake. He says, it's true that maybe the kashrus before World War II wasn't so good, but there was kosher butchers. And maybe, the Shemir Shabbos was difficult, but the children grew up who stopped being Shomer Shabbos, but they knew that their parents were Shomer Shabbos. And when the Jews came here after World War II, and they didn't want to work on Shabbos, they went they got a job with the children of those, right? And they said, no, we don't want to work on Shabbos. They said, yeah, you know what? We know what it means because our fathers and grandparents kept Shabbos. So don't worry about it. We'll give you off every Shabbos. He says, everything that we see now was built on the bones of all those Jews who were Moshe Nefesh in order to keep a little bit of Yiddishkeit. He says, even if their children didn't, but their children made sure, where did these yeshivas get all the money to start? They traveled around, the Rosh Yeshivas traveled around from town to town and found those Jews who remembered that there's such a thing as Torah, that there's such a thing as a yeshiva, and they supported them. How many stories I remember when I was yeshiva learning in high school talking about the Rosh Yeshivas just travel around Pennsylvania, Ohio, to all the small towns where they were eating, and they raised money to keep yeshivas going. Who gave them the money? These were not the world's biggest Talmidei Chachamim. They were simple Jews, but they'd come to America, they made a little bit of money, and they supported the rebuilding of Torah. So, yeah, maybe the mikvahs were a little bit shy about the mikvahs. Shayam Wyoming. When they built the shul, the synagogue in Cheyenne, Wyoming in the 1940s. Big, beautiful shul. I was there. It's at 300 people. Big, beautiful shul. They said it's the most kosher mikveh in America. Because when they were digging the building, they hit a mayan. They hit a well. And there's no way they could stop it. So they said, instead of stopping it, let's turn it into a mikveh. So they have a sump pump, and if you want to fill up the mikveh, you stop the sump pump, the mikveh would fill. There's no kosher a mayan mikveh in the middle of Cheyenne. No, you can't get there because you go find a live well. The mayan was coming. Huh? Yeah. There's wells. There's wells. Lots of the houses here used to be on well water.
No, but there's a well. They water all the grass off the road.
Right.
I don't know if
That's what we used to get Maim Shalana for the matzah baking. One of the houses then found the well broke. Goes all the way down.
That's not the problem.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of chemicals are in the water, but again, the circus of Klal Yisrael, we forget to look at where we came from, and therefore we have a tendency to overlook where we're going to. Parshas is to tell us what the past, the present, Klal Yisrael. We'll be able to sing the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem will avenge for all of the difficulties that Klal Yisrael have gone through. Keep our Moser Amai.